We all know that initial rush, right? That
Yeah.
feeling when you meet someone and it just clicks, feels almost magical, like they understand everything you've ever wanted.
That sense of deep connection, like finding a missing piece.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then sometimes that amazing feeling starts to feel a bit shaky. Maybe even like it's built on something not quite real.
That's a really common and honestly deeply human experience. In those early days, we're often seeing more than just the person in front of us.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine someone, let's call her Anna. She's describing her new partner, saying he's so strong, incredibly wise, gentle, understanding. It's intense admiration.
Okay.
But listen closely to the way she says it. Maybe there's a little tremor in her voice, something just below the surface. Those words, strength, wisdom, tenderness, they aren't just compliments. They're painting a picture of someone feeling a very specific internal need for her.
Right, like she's almost building this perfect person from her own hopes and desires. And yet, you mentioned that hint of tension.
Mhm.
Where does that idealization, that almost blinding feeling actually come from? It feels bigger than just being impressed.
It often comes from what we call transference. It's a core idea, really. We carry around, unresolved feelings, unmet needs from our past, often from childhood.
Unfinished business, sort of.
Exactly, unfinished emotional business. And then a new person comes along, and unconsciously we sort of paste those old feelings onto them.
So Anna's intense admiration.
Yeah.
It might not just be about her partner.
It might be significantly influenced by who he represents to her unconscious mind. It's like an echo from the past, triggered by the present. She feels completely understood, perhaps, because he's fulfilling a longing that originated long ago.
Okay, so this new person becomes a kind of screen we project onto them.
That's a great way to put it, a screen. Or you could think of it as a mirror, but it's a funny kind of mirror, the mirror of the psyche, let's say.
Funny how.
Because instead of just showing the other person, it reflects back what we desperately want or need to see. It shows our projections, yes, but those projections tell us a lot about our own inner world, our desires, those old unmet needs.
You mentioned the past, childhood. How exactly do those early relationships influence who we put on this pedestal later?
Well, think about Anna again. Her lover is strong, wise, tender. Does that combination sound vaguely familiar? Maybe it echoes qualities of, say, her father or another key figure whose approval or attention she really craved.
Ah, okay, so it's not usually a conscious thing, like, oh, he's just like dad.
Rarely conscious. It's more this unconscious process of identification. We absorb traits, dynamics, ways of relating from those crucial early figures, and then, without realizing it, we might seek out relationships where we can replay those dynamics.
Replay them, like trying to get it right this time.
Sometimes, yes. Or simply recreating what feels familiar, even if it wasn't entirely positive. It's like casting a new actor in an old role from our personal life script.
That makes a strange kind of sense.
Right.
But what fuels that intensity, that deep need to idealize someone so much? It feels primal.
It often is. It taps into a profound yearning from the unconscious, driven by those fundamental needs for love, validation, security, maybe needs that weren't fully met way back when. Repressed emotions play a part too.
And the unconscious doesn't just spell things out, does it?
No, it speaks in symbols. So for Anna, her lover becomes this powerful symbol. He represents love, capital L. He represents validation, security, everything she feels she lacks.
But there's a catch there, isn't there? If
Yeah.
all that fulfillment is located in him.
Exactly. That's the crucial point. When we unconsciously place the responsibility for our core needs entirely onto someone else, we're essentially handing over our own power, our own agency, to find that fulfillment within ourselves or in healthier ways.
Which sets us up for disappointment when they inevitably turn out to be human.
Precisely. And what about the parts of ourselves we don't like? The insecurities, the anger, the things we try to push away?
Where they go in this dynamic?
That brings us to the concept of the shadow. Think of it as the container for all the traits and impulses we've rejected or denied in ourselves. Things that don't fit our self-image.
So Anna might have hidden anger or deep insecurity.
Yes. And when the idealized relationship starts to hit bumps, when her lover inevitably disappoints her in some way, guess where those shadow aspects might end up?
Projected onto him.
Very often. Suddenly, the perfect partner becomes the source of all frustration. He might be seen as critical or distant or controlling, mirroring the very things Anna dislikes or fears in herself. It's like seeing your own disowned reflection.
So when Anna feels that surge of, say, irrational jealousy over something small or crippling self-doubt after a minor disagreement, that's not just about the present moment.
Often it's much bigger than the moment itself. Those disproportionate reactions are classic signs of transference rearing its head. The emotion feels too big for the trigger, right?
Definitely.
That intensity often comes from redirecting old, unresolved feelings. Maybe feelings towards her father, perhaps? Feelings of abandonment or never being good enough that were formed in childhood, but lie dormant until activated in a close adult relationship.
It sounds like a cycle.
Yeah.
Idealize, reality intrudes, project the shadow, feel disappointed.
It can absolutely become a cycle. Idealization, disillusionment, projection, resentment. It often mirrors early ambivalence we might have felt towards a primary caregiver.
Ambivalence, like loving them but also being angry or hurt.
Exactly. Think of Anna perhaps desperately wanting her father's approval, but also resenting him for not meeting her needs or for being emotionally unavailable. That push-pull, that wanting closeness but fearing engulfment or disappointment can echo powerfully in adult romance.
Almost like the old Oedipus complex idea, that tension between closeness and needing to be separate.
It connects to those fundamental developmental tensions, yes. The idealization tries to capture that perfect, merged closeness, while the disillusionment brings back the old fears and frustrations, leading to pulling away or devaluing the partner.
It sounds like we have all these unconscious tricks, these defenses, to avoid feeling that pain. But maybe they keep us stuck. You mentioned projection. What else is going on?
Oh, there's a whole toolkit of defense mechanisms. Repression is a big one, pushing painful memories or unacceptable feelings, like that lack of paternal validation Anna experienced deep down out of awareness.
But it doesn't just disappear, right?
No, it leaks out. It might surface as that intense need for constant approval from her partner. Then there's denial, simply refusing to see the flaws in the idealized person, maintaining the illusion.
Even when the evidence is right there.
Sometimes, yes. And paradoxically, that denial can coexist with its opposite. Hypervigilance, constantly scanning the partner for tiny imperfections, almost anticipating the inevitable crash.
This sounds exhausting, trying to manage the illusion.
It is. It keeps the person tightly bound in the transference dynamic.
Yeah.
And all those little behaviors, avoiding certain topics, changing the subject if you ask about the partner's flaws, maybe expressing skepticism about the past's relevance.
Those are clues.
They can be manifestations of resistance. Unconscious attempts to keep the analysis or even self-reflection away from the painful truth underlying the idealization. It's protecting that fragile construction.
And this all ties back to transference.
Fundamentally, yes, Anna's lover is the screen. He's carrying the projection of her unresolved feelings about her father, so when he inevitably acts like himself and not the projection, it feels like a deep betrayal, echoing those earlier hurts.
Wow. Okay. You also mentioned ambivalence and attachment. How does that play out day to day?
It's that tricky dance, craving deep intimacy, wanting to merge, but also being terrified of being swallowed up, of losing yourself.
So you pull closer, then push away.
Exactly. It reflects those unresolved developmental tensions, the need for connection versus the need for autonomy. It fuels the cycle, idealize, reason, devalue, separate.
It really is like a tightrope walk. And all these defenses, projection, repression, denial, resistance, they work together, presumably.
Absolutely. They form an intricate, largely unconscious system designed to shield the ego, to keep anxiety at bay. But it's often an unstable system.
And the cracks show up as symptoms, like the jealousy or anger.
Yes, or withdrawal or anxiety. Those symptoms represent the unconscious trying to manage the conflict between the idealized illusion and encroaching reality. They are compromised formations, attempts to find a balance, however precarious.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. But it's also important to remember, while we're using Anna as an example, these dynamics, projection, transference, the shadow, defenses, these are universal human struggles. We all engage in them to some degree in our relationships. It's part of being human.
That's somewhat comforting, actually.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like getting stuck in these patterns can really block genuine connection. Could there be a turning point for someone like Anna? A way out?
Yes, definitely. Often, a turning point comes when the unconscious finds a way to communicate more directly, perhaps through a powerful dream or a sudden vivid memory resurfacing.
A dream? Like what?
Imagine Anna dreams she's looking into a shimmering lake. She sees her reflection, but next to it there's a shadowy figure. At first, she feels uneasy, but then the figure merges with her reflection and they both sink into the water. But instead of panic, she feels recognition, a strange sense of peace.
Okay. What would that mean?
Symbolically, the lake could be her unconscious, the shadow figure, those denied parts of herself, maybe her anger, her insecurity. Sinking into the lake isn't drowning, but maybe surrender, letting go of the rigid control, allowing integration.
Integration, like bringing the shadow into the light.
Exactly. And there's an element of wish fulfillment here, in the Freudian sense. Not just wishing for goodies, but the unconscious wishing to resolve internal conflict, to bring fragmented parts of the self together.
How might she connect that dream to her actual life with her partner?
She might start to see that shadowy figure as representing those intense, angry outbursts she sometimes directs at her lover. Recognize them as echoes of old anger towards her father, misplaced onto her partner. She might realize her intense idealization wasn't really love, but a desperate defense against the terrifying feeling of abandonment she associates with her childhood.
That sounds like a huge realization, a real shift.
It is. It's the beginning of seeing her lover not as a symbol or a screen, but as a separate person. His flaws stop being signs of betrayal and start becoming just human imperfections. And crucially, she starts to see herself more clearly too, including her own shadow.
But that insight, that aha moment, it's not the end of the story, is it?
Not at all. That's just the door opening. Then comes the real work, what Freud called working through. It's a gradual, often slow process of digesting that insight, integrating it into her life.
So not a quick fix.
Definitely not. It takes patience. It means acknowledging the past influence without being rigidly deterministic about it. It means learning to sit with those uncomfortable feelings of ambivalence, holding both the love and the frustration. Embracing the paradox that wholeness comes from accepting our fragmented parts.
Could a specific memory trigger this working through?
Absolutely. Anna might suddenly recall a vivid childhood memory, maybe waiting excitedly for her father on the porch. He arrives, perhaps he praises her, but there's a conditionality to it, a sense that the joy is fragile, dependent on her performance.
And that becomes her template for love.
It could. She might realize, oh my God, that feeling, that's what I've been seeking from my partner. That intense but ultimately conditional validation. She sees her lover wasn't the answer to the unmet need for unconditional acceptance, but rather a repetition of the old dynamic.
That's powerful, understanding the pattern.
Yes, but insight alone isn't transformation. True change requires ongoing work, consciously integrating those shadow aspects, choosing different responses rather than falling back into the old patterns.
So Anna might start thinking something like, wow, I've spent so long running from parts of myself, projecting them everywhere. Maybe real love isn't about finding a perfect person, but about accepting the imperfections in them and in me.
That would be a profound shift, a real opening. And even with that insight, the unconscious continues its work, bubbling up new awareness, new challenges. It's a lifelong process, really.
It really underscores how complex our romantic lives are, doesn't it? So many hidden currents.
It really does. And that initial powerful pull of idealization, while it feels so good, it's so important to recognize how it can actually be a barrier.
A barrier to what? To real connection.
To genuine connection, absolutely. And to self-awareness. It keeps us focused on the fantasy, not the reality of ourselves or the other person.
So really digging into these ideas, transference, projection, the shadow, it's not just academic, it can genuinely help us understand ourselves better.
I firmly believe so. It offers incredibly valuable insights into our own patterns, why we choose who we choose, why we react the way we do, why certain relationship dynamics feel so familiar. It can light the path toward more authentic connections.
That's incredibly helpful. So maybe something for you listening to think about. Those times you felt that overwhelming, almost perfect connection. Could parts of your own inner world, maybe even shadowy parts you're not fully aware of, be shaping that powerful feeling? And how might understanding these unconscious dances change how you approach relationships and maybe even your own journey of self-discovery? Definitely food for thought.